Thank you. So the benefit of being at the end of the day is that you get to riff off of what everyone else has said, and you got some cognitive shortcuts. And for you guys, I don't know how you're going to do this, but I've got a treat since you made it to the end. We're going to screen 12 Years a Slave a couple of weeks before it hits the theaters. So if you sign up and email, I'll get you an invite. So you got to create it. You're going to start it. So figure that out by the end of the time, and whoever's still here will get an invite. So as you said, I'm Michael Scott. I'm from Equity Matters and Place Matters. And Place Matters is out of the Joint Center. We're in 24 cities and counties across the country. And the thing is about Place Matters, it really does matter. This place matters. You heard that this is the center of the Underground Railroad in Baltimore. And that is particularly significant for me because my family comes from the center of the Underground Railroad in central Maryland in this little Quaker town called Sandy Spring. And that's really relevant to me because it's not some far-off historical thing. I'm one generation removed from slavery. My father was born there in 1916. His father was born there in 1861 in January, so before the Civil War really got going. And so the thing about that place and this place is what we can learn from how they practice community. And they practice community like you practice law or medicine. They practice it as a verb. And you can always tell people from Sandy Spring, there's something, you don't have to be from there. You can be a descendant, and everybody has a certain way that they view the world. So today I'm supposed to be talking to you about redrawing geography. Now the word geography, of course, comes to us from the Greek, geography, to draw the world. So it could be considered redundant unless you consider that we're going to redraw how we draw the world. And that's why this place matters, and that's why the lesson from my descendants, who I feel are here with me today, one of them whom built this building, as they redrew their place temporally, socioeconomically, and geographically, they have very important lessons about how we re-envision our world. Out that window, 50 yards from us, are two children who will die 30 years before they should. At least that's what the data tells us, and Sean Donovan talked about that. Your zip code in Baltimore and in every city across this country is the greatest determinant of your life expectancy, far more than your genetic code. Now, what he didn't get into is the causes of that, and I won't spend all of my precious time doing that here. You can Google it and see some of our many reports, but I'll give you the shorthand version. It's about, and Dr. Brown referenced it earlier, it's about powerlessness. So how does that get into our bodies? It's about stress, right? So I don't know if you know the term, I know you do, Dave, allostatic load. My grandmother, my mom's here, hey mom. My grandmother used to say, boy, you're getting on my nerves. You're getting on my last nerve, in fact. Turns out she was a neuroscientist. There is an actual last nerve. There's a tipping point of stress, of nerves, after which you reach it, you are chronically stressed. And when you're chronically stressed, you're open to chronic disease and chronic avertable death. And so just out that window are folks that only crime is living in this neighborhood and being born here. And their life expectancy is tied to the socioeconomic opportunities that are here. So what can we learn from our ancestors? Well, before we go there, let's talk about the geography of cities. And we heard earlier in the day that as goes cities, so goes humanity now. More people, 1 million people a day are moving to cities. For the first time since 2008, more people live in cities than in rural areas. So the future of civilization is really at stake. And I submit to you that the last time that we really redrew cities, we got it terribly wrong. Now, I came to this work out of commercial appraisal, venture capital. I was the only capitalist in my family. Everyone else is teacher, preacher, artist. And yet, it was an instructive, I guess you call it apprenticeship, because you learn to measure things. And I was at the London School of Economics, and I think his name is Lord now, he was Nick then, with Lord Stern, said the most impactful thing to me the first day of class. He said, a civilization can be measured quite simply in any period of time in history by how long the people live and the quality of the life that they have while they live. And by that measure, we're failing, and we've been failing for some time. And I'll submit to you the reason we've been failing, particularly for minorities, is because we made decisions out of fear versus abundance. And the relevance of the lessons of my ancestors is that even in the most demonic phase of American history, slavery, they had the audacity to make decisions and to revision a world out of abundance, out of equity. And their descendants benefit from that. People in my family, black men in my family, have been living 2 and 3 times their life expectancy for 3 and 4 generations. That's why I'm 1 generation removed from slavery. So they've got something right about civilization that we can learn from. Now, what does this have to do with how we revision cities? Well, all of these socioeconomic things that impact health have their root causes in fear. I mean, we heard Secretary Donovan, and I'm glad to hear he's listening to community. We are very much part of the Place Matters community in 24 cities and counties across the country, lifting up community voice, balancing it with policymakers and academics and business folks so that the wisdom in community could be heard. That's very much a Place Matters initiative. We can't claim credit. There was many people. But it's been adopted into HUD policy. It's choice neighborhoods and sustainability, and it's promise. And now on top of that, we'll put promise zones. But the devil's in the details and how it gets executed. If folks are doing this work in the wrong spirit out of fear, it will not reverse the course that we're currently on. And I submit to you today that that's deeply problematic. It's a national security issue. It is, as we've also heard, enormously costly. We've done the studies, I won't belabor that, but 1.24 trillion was the study we did when we commissioned it with Hopkins. It would pay for the Health Care Act, 4 years. So we know it's costly. But there's something that I would submit to you that I don't think we've thought much about related to this fear versus abundance. When we talk about racism, and I'll agree with my friend Troy earlier, who's got great data and we big data, race is a very crude proxy. It's racism. And we've never really examined what that does to the people that practiced it, or much less what the systemic effects are. So it's not just folks of color who've been addressed, but as Toni Morrison said on Charlie Rose brilliantly, she said the people that practice racism have a neuroses. There's a craziness that has never been examined. And we never really looked at what that looks like as it embeds in our policy and makes it hard for us to remove them. And I would suggest that even those who don't actively practice it, but those who are privileged and who have not examined their privilege and how privilege, and I'm privileged as well, but how privilege can stunt development. You don't know how good you are unless you've competed. And if you need someone else to be on the knees so you can be tall, that's a problem of your neurosis. You'll never grow as strong as you could be. We've never really looked at what our gross national impact of that is. We've never thought about American exceptionalism with that kind of drag on our system. And by the way, other countries are not having that problem as they reinvest, and we have to compete with them. When we redrew cities the last time, and sure, there's the promise neighborhood and all that stuff, but I submit to you as a venture capital guy, the metrics are what they are. We're failing. We've done good stuff, but it's been on the margins. We have not had the will to change. Now let me tell you when we have. It was based in fear though, but it was 9/11. In 9/11, 4 planes crashed in a very insidious day in our history. And we totally redrew our world. We showed enormous national will to do that. Do you know though that every day, the number of avertable deaths, that's deaths that are unnatural, avoidable, and unjust. Avertable deaths, deaths that do not need to be, just in the African American community alone, is equivalent to 1 airplane falling out of the sky every day, day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, decade after decade. And we shrug. Not only is there an enormous cost to life, but what does that say about our civilization? No longer are we minorities. There's a new majority, folks. It's coming, like it or not. The question is, when we redraw, when we revision, will we do it out of fear or will we do it out of abundance? Because my evidence, my lived experience of my family is that when we make decisions out of abundance, even when you're not sure, even when you have reason to doubt, that amazing things happen. But if you make fear-based decisions, you have externalities. Now, as we said, as I've established all through the day, this is Cities 2.0. As cities go, so goes civilization. There is one function of government alone, as far as I'm concerned, and what urban economics tells us. Urban economics' entire existence is based on this notion of unintended consequences, externalities. When people get together and live together in close spaces, things happen that they didn't expect. And the entire function of government is how we manage externalities, good and bad. I would submit to you that we are still dealing with the negative policy externalities of fear-based decision-making. All the great decisions, all the strides, all the nonprofits, all the things that we've done since the 40s, since the home loan corporation started redlining, none of them have changed the life expectancy. There is no greater impact on life expectancy. We know the data, it's clear. 10 to 15% of healthcare, of access to care avertable deaths is explainable by access to healthcare, which is stunning given how much time we spent on the debate and folks trying to overturn it. But it's only 10 to 15% of avertable death. Another 10 to 15% is genetics. And there's a range because of the effect of stress. The stress can change your epigenetics. So if you have a dormant genetic predisposition, your tipping point of stress gets reached and it gets triggered, where otherwise it would have remained dormant. That stogie you smoke because you're on top of the world, well, now you've got chronic stress, and guess what? You got lung cancer and mouth cancer. So one of our people is a cancer researcher. This is the cutting edge of science. So as we look to our ancestors for advice, we have to consider the powerful impact of these negative externalities and our choice to make fear-based decisions versus decisions of abundance. And I submit to you today that equity is required. Equity is about generosity. It's also about finance. And so I would submit to you a simple finance equation. Assets equals liabilities plus equity. But I'd like you to think about it in societal terms. Assets equals liabilities plus equity. It's your home. Your home value is equal to your mortgage plus your home equity. But think about it in societal terms, where liabilities is otherism, racism, genderism, I'll just call it otherism. And equity is a mindset of abundance. If we can hold constant the liabilities, certainly maybe refinance them and reduce them, and we can increase equity, the overall value of our nation and the values of our nation increase. It is about abundance, folks. And all of these programs, if we do not make decisions out of abundance and out of equity, they will continue to nip at the margins and not have the greatest impact on the ultimate measure of a civilization, which is life expectancy. I'll close by saying, and I'm going to butcher this paraphrase by my Morehouse brother, Dr. King, but he said, you know, we have the genius and the scientific and technological genius to make the world a neighborhood, but not a brotherhood. And either we will live together as brothers or perish as fools. I submit to you that is the lesson of this place of my ancestors here, to have faith, to think that despite not having the evidence in front of you, that you can live a life of abundance and practice community in a way that allows community to rise and have generational proof as a result. Or we can make decisions out of fear and continue to have negative externalities year after year. Thank you.